So I believe life is defined as time. There is a time to be born and there is a time to die. And I believe there's a time for everything, just like the Bible says. Now you have to understand that there is one important characteristic about time that you need to so much get into your head. And that is time always moves on, regardless of what happens. So if time does move on and time is what defines life, then you need to know that life should always move on. So the moment that your life begins to be stuck or get stuck at any point, then you begin to malfunction. So the most important thing is knowing that everything in life has to move on. Time never stopped when COVID hit. Time never stopped when the king died, when the queen died. Time never pauses regardless of what happens to it, or regardless of what happens in the world. It always moves on. So you need to realize that your life is time and time always moves on. So I sympathize with you if you didn't do well in your quiz. I'm happy for you if you did well. Regardless of what happened, we must move on. Today's class is the most important class. And one of the positives that I got so much from your quiz, I had some of you guys who did extremely well. And I knew some of you, you had all these setbacks and stuff. But trust me, whatever happened doesn't matter. What matters is what we're going to do with today. All right. So I'm going to ask for something. Please, whenever you're given any slides, please do share them with me. Whatever you're looking at in class, do share them with me. I want us to be moving up with your lecturer so that we're not lagging behind. Okay. And I'm going to cruise. I believe these recordings that I'm going to make will enable us to be quick and will enable us to keep up with your lecturer so that we're not lagging behind. All right. So I had no idea to say she had given you this unit one. I only had two, and yeah, I think I only had unit two. So I had no idea of this. If I knew, we would have passed through this. And we need to realize that your lecturer just uses the notes that she gives you. Okay. So it's just about understanding all the definitions, everything that she gives you, the calculations. With that, I believe we're going to be fine. I looked at your quiz and it was very much okay. Okay, so there's so much positives. I believe the next quiz will do much better. All right, so let us understand all the concepts and you're not going to find any difficulties. So I'll try by all means to summarize and simplify everything. Please don't let these videos compile. Whatever time, I'm going to be making them very short, at least 30 minutes to 40 minutes. Do watch them. Wherever you're not clear, give me a call so that I can just explain a bit, probably on whatever concepts you're not clear on. But I believe this video is just going to be about 30 to 40 minutes, less than 40 minutes. All right. But please, I want you to ensure that whatever video that I get to post, get to watch it and be updated on everything that I'm going to be giving you. All right. So I'm going to cruise a bit, but I'll make sure that you understand. So after this, I'll post the other video for unit two and we'll get into the calculations. I believe now your test two is going to be more on national income, which will bring about those things of the calculations, whatever we're doing. So, but let me just ensure that we get start from the first slide. All right, going down. Okay. All right. So let us we're going to look at the introduction and we'll just look at a school of thoughts. I think that will be so for today. So by coming to the definition of economics, I want you to understand that there's a problem, there's a mother, okay, of economics. And this mother of economics is called scarcity. So scarcity is the reason why there is economics today. So the word scarce simply just entails a situation where we are having limited resources and unlimited ones. Now, resources, these are simply things that we use to produce goods and services. All right. Now, these resources are limited. So, meaning because they are limited, we cannot produce everything that we desire to produce. So, because of that, we must make choices. And that's what gives birth to what is known as economics. Economics comes to look at how societies, individuals, governments, and firms make choices under this condition of what? Scarcity. So if you look at, for example, all these definitions, whatever I've said is what they are all talking about. And I think the most appealing to me, the one that I love the most, speak the definition that you understand, is this third one here, which defines that it's a social science that studies how individuals, governments, firms, and nations make choices on allocating scarce resources to satisfy their unlimited ones. All right, so how are we going to decide to make our choices? That's what economics is going to study. All right. So I hope that you have a book and you have a pen. There are certain things that I'm going to be saying that might not be necessarily in your notes. All right. But I want you just to be writing something as I'll be saying. It also helps you with your concentration, especially that we're not live. All right. So when we now understand, because we've now understood what economics is about, we know that economics is now going to be broken down into two parts. We're going to have microeconomics and macroeconomics. Now, to understand the difference between these two, usually I would give my students this one simple example, and it helps them to have a broader understanding of what it's all about. When you look at macroeconomics, let's say, for example, I come into your class and I find you guys making noise. And the first thing I say, this class is a noisy class. So that conclusion that I've made is based on everyone. So I've gotten all of you guys and I've put you together and I now define you as a noisy class. But you would agree with me that in every noisy class or whatever class that you might mention to say it's noisy or whatever, you'd realize that in that group of people that you're calling a noisy class, there are some individuals that are actually quiet and yeah, they're very good people, isn't it? So, but if I tend to look at the general, how the whole people are working, that we're looking at macroeconomics. But if I decide to say, okay, inside this class, let me pick at individuals. How do these individuals behave? Then I'm looking at what? Microeconomics. There is a term that I've heard so much, I think, from lots of people, which I don't believe in, and they would say all men are the same or all ladies are the same. When you talk at that, that's a study under what? Macroeconomics. But if you look at now, how do these individuals, let us now pick out of what you're saying, all men are the same, there are some individuals that are actually good men and good women. So among those, and I pray that you're one of them, among those, when you start looking now at the studying of individuals, let us look, take one man, let us look at how he behaves, let us observe him, how he operates. Then we're looking at what? Microeconomics. All right. So in short, I want you just to write this down. Microeconomics, okay, takes a bottom-up approach, whereas macroeconomics takes an up-bottom approach. What do we mean by that? When we talk about the bottom-up approach, you're looking at every big thing comes from small things, isn't it? And every small thing is what makes up the big thing. So if you're looking at microeconomics, you're looking at small things that are making up this big thing called macroeconomics. So if we talk about the bottom-up approach, you're looking at how do individual choices affect the economy as a whole. So imagine me, Duncan, being a businessman, all right, and you being a business lady or a man. If we're all entrepreneurs, we begin to hire people. When we begin to hire people, it's going to start affecting the unemployment. The unemployment will come down. So you can see that it's because of our individual things that we're doing, our individual decisions of being entrepreneurs that are affecting the whole economy. So you can see that's called the bottom-up approach. But when you look at macroeconomics, you're looking at what you're looking at the whole economy and how the whole economy, how it operates and how these choices that are made from up get to affect individuals. For example, in macroeconomics, you deal with inflation. Now, inflation is a macroeconomic topic. Why? Because inflation is something that affects the nation as a whole, and it's an up approach affecting the individuals. So if you look at, for example, when inflation is high in a country, who gets to complain? It is the individuals that are in the country. So getting to complain, awe unga wa dola this is too high, the prices are too high, and so on and so forth. So when you look at that, that's an up-bottom approach because you're looking at something that is affecting the whole economy and affecting the individuals in the economy. So I hope that was able to do with distinguishing and just giving a broader understanding of macro and microeconomics. All right. So for example, you look at unemployment. Unemployment is a macroeconomic concept because when you're looking at unemployment, you're not only looking at individuals who are unemployed, but you're looking at the whole economy as a whole. So if there's high unemployment, who gets to suffer? It's the individuals that are in the country. So you need to realize that that's an up-bottom approach, whereas microeconomics takes a bottom-up approach. I hope that was very clear for you. All right, now let us look at some of the key economic fundamentals. All right, now there is this term that is known as a theory. These are just terms that you need to understand that we're going to be using. Now, a theory, now when I see such a definition, and I want you to develop this, when you see something like this is a theory. They are defining a theory. Now, there are words there that I probably know you might not understand. And it's very important that if you see something like that, please use Google, check the synonyms, and let you simplify it in your own words. Okay. So, for example, here we are looking at what is a theory. Okay. Now, when you look at what is a theory, when you look at this term, the plausible, or however you pronounce it, so the word plausible here, all right, when you look at plausible, we can replace it with the word reasonable. Okay, that's the other name for the word plausible, reasonable. All right. Then when you look at this other key term here is principles. When you talk about the principles, you're simply looking at the rules that guide something. All right. So maybe principles of economics, you're simply looking at what are the rules that surround economics. How do economists define this and stuff? So when you're looking at principles, you're looking at the laws or the rules. Then you're looking at plausible here, it simply talks about what? Reasons, something that is reasonable. So now let's define it. We'll put reasonable here where there's plausible, and you see how much this is going to be something that you don't have to master, but you have to understand. So a theory is a reasonable or scientifically accepted general principle or body of principles offered to explain a phenomenon. Now, a phenomenon is simply an event, something that happened. For example, you have the something like the when price goes when quantity when prices go up, what happens to demand? Demands falls, isn't it? So that's a phenomena because that's something that is you have experienced, you have noticed happens. Now, how do you explain it? When now comes to the theory, it is a reasonable or scientifically acceptable general principle or body of principles. So it's meaning here we're talking about what? It's a general law or body of laws that are offered to explain a phenomenon. So I hope that brings to you something you know that we're talking about that you already know. And I hope that was able to help you to understand more. Now let us look now at how you define a model. All right. Now, when you look at a model, we are trying to simplify things here. All right, I'm going to give you this simple definition that I have and not precisely what your madam gave you. I think it's not more clear, but I want you to write this down. An economic model. So this definition that the madam gave is very much okay, and it is very true. But you can also say it in this manner. I always love to bring school to the places where I'm understanding what I'm talking about. And I want you to write this, okay? A model, so when talking about economics here, we're talking about economic models. So we can write to say an economic model is a simplified version of reality. So it is a simplified version of reality that allows us to observe, understand, and make predictions about economic behavior. I'll repeat that. It is a simplified version of reality that allows us to observe, understand, and make predictions about economic behavior. That is what a model is. So a model just tries to bring a picture view. For example, you look at the PPF. The PPF tries to explain scarcity. It tries to explain all these economic terms that you can think of in a picture form. All right. So that's what a model is all about. Now, I want us to look now at what is a random variable. Now, a random variable as well, I'll give you a more simpler definition that I get to have over this. A random variable is simply a variable whose value is unpredictable. You cannot predict it. For example, if I say the number of people in a person's family, if you look at an individual, we cannot predict uh, the number of people that are in that family, right? They can be the two of them, it can just be one, or whatever. Any variable whose value is unknown or you cannot predict is simply known as what? A random variable. And according to the definition that the madam gave us, is that it is a variable whose value is unknown or a function that assigns value to each of an experiment's outcome. All right. Now, here, when it comes to independent and dependent variable, please, when you say something is independent, meaning it does not depend on anything. Dependent, meaning it depends on something. So when, for example, you have an equation, I want you just to write this: y is equal to x plus 4. So now, if you replace values there of x, whenever x changes, y will automatically change. So there we say that y depends on the values of x. So we call our x as our independent variable. Then we call our y as our dependent variable. I hope that is okay. So having that background definition, now here you put it in terms of the way that the madam described it, it's just the way that I've mentioned it. So if you look at the definition of an independent variable, it is a factor or phenomenon that causes or influences another associated factor or phenomenon called a dependent variable. So this one, it causes or influences one to change. Whereas a dependent variable, it is the one that is what? That is influenced, or it is the one that is affected by the independent variable. Okay, so please look at those definitions with the explanation that I'm giving and now get to them and make them to be something that will be of your own. All right, so here we have an example. Income is an independent variable because it influences another variable, or called what? Consumption. So meaning when income changes, your consumption changes. If you start getting higher pays now, you start getting more money, obviously your consumption levels will change as a result of your income doing what? Changing. All right, I hope that was very much okay. Now, this is just talking about what macroeconomics is, what are some of the topics that we study, all right, of which I believe because of what I gave, I think earlier on, you should be able to pass through these notes, the slides, the unit 1, and you will just see everything that I've been mentioning about. I'll go rush to the last thing, which is in this slide, that is known as the schools of thought. So when you're looking at the schools of thoughts, remember, there is one thing that we defined up there, which is known as a theory. And we say the theory, these are reasonable or scientifically generally accepted principles that explain a phenomenon. So these schools of thoughts that we're talking about here, they are just represents the different theories that explain economics. All right, so we have 3 schools of thoughts called the classical economists, Keynesians, and the monetarists. Now, I have to make you understand that these things become easier when you understand the background topic of factors of production. Okay, so I want you just to take you back. This is not something that is in your notes, but I'll just be brief. And I hope that you can probably rewind if I'll be too fast so that you can get whatever I'll be saying. There are what are known as factors of production. Now, the other name for resources are factors of production. So factors of production or resources, these are the same thing. So you define factors of production as the resources that society uses to produce the goods and services. So whatever thing that we use to produce a good and a service is known as what? Is known as a factor of production. For example, right now, if Duncan is providing, I believe I'm providing, this is a service, isn't it? I'm teaching. So when I'm providing a service, what am I using, for example? One of the things that I'm using is myself. I'm using me, isn't it? I'm putting in an effort. I'm the one speaking. So you call that as labor. Okay, it's a factor of production called labor. So labor is one of the factors of production. It's one of the things that we use. So these are simply the human efforts that are put into the production of goods and services. It's known as what? Labor. Okay, then the other thing that we can use are the tools, the machines. For example, right now, recording this class, I'm using my phone for internet, I'm using my laptop, um, different types of things that I can use. Whatever thing, at any tool or a building, all right? So machines, a building, anything, any tool that I can use to produce a good and a service or a service is known as what? Is known as capital. So capital, these are the tools, the machines, and the buildings that are used by society to produce goods and services. All right. So for example, if I talk about I'm producing bread, if I have an oven, it's a tool that I'm using to produce. If I have a knife, that's a tool that I'm using. If I'm renting an apartment, I have a building, that building is known as what? Capital. All right, so capital is, so we have physical capital, two types of capital, physical capital and human capital. Human capital, you just look at the knowledge, the skills that are invested in to produce a good or a service. For example, I have to research, I have to keep on advancing in terms of my education in order for me to teach. So knowledge is a tool, right? So knowledge is known as capital, but what type of capital? Human capital. All right. Now, the other factor of production is known as um, land. So now land is simply any natural resource that you use to produce a good and service. Okay, so it can be water. All right, I think I'd lost some internet. So let me just share my video once more. Okay. All right. So I think I ended on the factors of production and I was talking about land being a natural resource, right? Okay. So, and the last, so land is the natural resources. Then we have the other one that is called entrepreneurship. Now, entrepreneurship is simply now the process of combining these three factors of production that I talked about. So, for example, you call Duncan as an entrepreneur because he's combining the land, is combining the labor, and is also combining capital. You put them together, you produce a good and service. Now, the process of doing that is known as entrepreneurship, which is the fourth factor of production. Now, these four factors of production now, they lead us now into what is known as an economic system. Economic system is just the means, the method that society uses to distribute the goods and services. All right. Now, who owns these factors of production determines the type of economic system. Now, there are three kinds of economic systems. The first one is called the command economy. The command economy is an economic system where the government is the owner of these factors of production. The government owns the factors of production. For example, during the Kaunda times, the government is the one that would decide everything, how to, whatever you're going to study as an individual, how you produce, the prices, everything is being run by the government. But we have another one that is called the free market economy. In the free market economy, it is where we are saying leave the economy to operate on its own. Government should not come in. Leave the economy to work on its own. All right. Then the last one now is called the mixed economy, where you have both the command and the free market. All right. When you have that background of what I've spoken about, remember a free market, you don't have the government. The government is not determining. The government is only providing an environment, a good environment, for example, lowering taxes and just something that will enable the entrepreneurs to work. But in the command economy, the government has control over everything. Now, with that background, now we talk about now classicals, Keynesians, and the monetarists. Now, these schools of thoughts try to explain economics based on different theories. So, for example, when you look at the classicals, now these classicals, I believe in your own time, you can look at this. The classicals are the ones that advocate for no government intervention. They don't want government to come in and set prices and do these things. They are the ones that are known as the classicals. All right. So the classicals, they believe, okay, and they spoke about this called laissez-faire, meaning let be. We are saying the government should not intervene in the market. Let them not come and set prices. Don't let them come and tell us what to do and what we should not do. Just let the government keep law and order, provide a suitable environment for business, and not exactly come in to start determining things. So that is known as the classic. So the classicals advocate for no government intervention in the market. All right. So that is the what? The classical economics. I believe in your own time, you can just take a look at all these notes and you get a more understanding of what I'm talking about. So in the classicals, they say, if, for example, we are having a problem, we are we're in a recession, the economy is dropping. They say that the economy corrects itself through what is known as an invisible hand. So when you talk about an invisible hand, you're simply looking at the market forces of competition and we have competition and what's this other thing? Okay, self-interest, yeah. So it's competition and self-interest. So when you're looking at competition, for example, you look at the way that Yango and all these businesses are working in Zambia. When you look, for example, at the transport system, the government doesn't come in to set prices for Yango or these taxis. But because of the stiff competition that is there, all of them are trying to win. They're trying to win customers. So they have to lower prices and they'll raise quality. Now, in them themselves doing that, the government doesn't need to come in. That's what the classicals are advocating for. So they're saying, government, don't come in. Just let these uh, people who are doing business compete among themselves. And by them competing among themselves, people in the society will tend to benefit on two things, that is quality and lower prices. So you can see because of the Ulendo now has competition, their prices also have to be lower in order for them to have what? Customers. So their interest is not that they should lower the prices. Their interest is to make profit. But in order for them to make profit, you need customers. So what needs to happen? You lower your prices. If they lower prices, who benefits? It is us, the individuals. So you see that the economy can tend to correct itself whenever there is a problem without what? Government interference. That is what the classical economists advocate for. Now, we have these ones who are now called the Keynesians. Now, the Keynesian economists, well, one who advocated these was an economist called John Keynes. All right, I think John something like that, but his surname was Keynes. Now, this economist is the one now that came up to criticize the what? The classicals. He says, how can the economy correct itself? To some extent, the economy cannot correct itself. We need government to intervene. So, as a critic, he says government must come in. And government, when they come in, the Canadians believe that there are three things that run the economy. And these are the three things that make up the economy. They state it is consumption, government expenditure, investment, and net exports. And they say these things have to be influenced by the government mainly. So the government can come in, for example, lower taxes. They can do what? Raise consumption. If the government can raise government expenditure, the government can also influence interest rates through what? They can influence interest rates, thereby raising investment, and they can also influence the what? The net exports. So they say the economy can't correct itself. The government needs to come into the market to correct things. And these people are called the what? The Keynesians. So you can see that all these schools of thoughts, the first school of thoughts, the classicals, these guys are just the critics of them. Then now the Keynesians as well, who advocated that government should come in and do these things, they also have a critic called the monetarist, which is the last school of thought. Now, the monetarist, okay, these now were advocated by Milton Friedman, okay? He's the one that brought up this called monetarist economics. Now, the classicals, the first one, which I mentioned, that one was brought about by, what's this economist's name? Okay, I've forgotten his name, but I think I should mention just when I remember. Oh, Adam Smith, rather. So his name is Adam Smith. He's the one that advocated for the what? For the first one, which is the classicals. Then we have John Maynard Keynes, who advocates. So Keynes is the one that advocated for the Keynesians, and the monetarist now is the one that was advocated by what? By Milton Friedman. Now, under this one also says the government should come in. They are saying this government coming in, yes, they can do whatever they can do, but we are criticizing what influences the economy is not the government. Control over those consumption and government expenditure and all those things. They say the main thing that can correct the economy is the control of what? Money supply in the economy. So they say, let us focus on money supply. When you control money supply, the economy will fix itself. Stop trying to advocate for consumption. Stop trying to advocate for government expenditure and all these things. Just focus on one thing, money supply. And that's what will bring about what? Change in the economy. And this school of thought is known as what? Monetarist economics. So I hope that we have gotten a broad understanding about what these schools of thoughts are all about. So monetarists, I think we can see money, that's money. So monetarists, they advocate that the economy will mainly depend on the money supply. Money supply is the key. The Keynesians, state government intervention is the key. We need to influence consumption, government expenditure, and net exports, and also as well as investment. The classicals say all of you just leave the economy to work alone. Don't influence money supply. Let's not let government come into the market. So you can see that all these have got their own ideas. So as we begin now to look at the first topic, for example, looking at national income. National income is mainly based on the Keynesians. Okay, how Keynes determines national income. That's why we have the C plus I plus G plus NX. That's the Keynesian school of thought that we're trying to explain how national income is determined. All right. When you look at unemployment, how does Keynes say we should get rid of unemployment? How do the monetarists will also have their own say. The classicals as well will also have their own explanation of how to get rid of what? Unemployment. So when you look at, for example, inflation, the monetarists say inflation should be corrected by through what? So you can see that the different arguments, okay? If you look at one of the is general inflation. So there's an argument between the classicals and the Keynesians and also the monetarists of what causes inflation. So the classicals will argue that this is what is causing inflation. The Keynesians will say, no, it's not this, it is this. And it's just between them. All right. So mainly it's about the classicals and the Keynesians. All right. Who would explain most of these concepts. Then we have this important thing, I think, that came in your test. I think it's going to be the last thing that I'll just mention about called the business cycles. Business cycles, it's a cycle. It goes up, it comes down. It's like moods of people. A person who has moods, lero bali pamwamba, mailo bali pansi. So when you're looking at the aspects of business cycle, just looking at the fluctuations in output and employment. These are the two things, output and employment, all right, with alternating periods of booms and recessions. When you're looking at the boom, you're simply talking about a period of time when the economy, the GDP is increasing. A recession is when things are falling, meaning output and employment are both falling. So please get to pass through this understand more of what a boom is, but that is the pretty much idea that is there. So now when you're looking at the fluctuations in these two, today it's up, tomorrow it's down, the other year it's up, tomorrow it's down. They call that as business what? Business cycles, and they're represented by this diagram that you can see there. So you can see all periods when the economy, when the output and unemployment are rising, okay, and employment rather are rising. So you can see at this point here, we have this point that it's rising. You call that economic expansion or a boom. All right, then where it reaches the maximum, it's written, it's as the peak, then it begins to fall. So when it begins to fall, we are calling that a recession. Okay, so when it starts to rise again, you call that the what? The expansion. So you can see this rising, falling. You refer to that as booms, or you refer to that as business cycles, the booms and the recessions. All right, so that is pretty much, I think, about this first topic. The rest is just talking about the topics that have been going to be covered under macroeconomics. All right, and the role of government, the growth policies, and all these are all topics that we are supposed to do. So I'm going to be very quick, and I'll post more classes for you guys. But please do give me feedback and let me know how these classes are, if they're okay. Whatever argument you might have, please do inbox me and let me know. I'll continue to send them so that I can see how best I can improve. Okay, so do let me know if you're finding any challenges. Maybe I'm too fast, or maybe I'm this. Please do give me feedback on how you're finding this class. So thank you so much. I forgot to pray in the beginning, but I'll finally pray right here. Father, we thank you for this class. I pray for everybody, Lord, that has listened. I pray that you bless them and give them more understanding over these things. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. So thank you so much for having joined in. We'll see you. I'll wait for your feedback before I send in the other class. So thank you so much. Let me stop sharing and then I can pause everything. Thank you so much.